All right, well, greetings. I wanted to make a video for all of you to talk about what we did last week, going over to the Southern Baptist Convention, and then I will make a few comments about what I'd been involved in at the Republican Convention of Texas. But as you know, Janice and I went to the Southern Baptist Convention last week. Our week began on Sunday, and we went to Trinity Reformed Baptist Church over in La Miranda. Sam Renahan is one of the pastors there. We're familiar with him. We appreciate him. We've read his books. He's been at a conference, a few years ago when we were talking about the doctrine of God and the Holy Trinity, and he gave some great presentations on that. Additionally, we hope to have him next year, trying to see if I can get him to speak to us on the covenants next year. So it was a great opportunity to go and worship with the saints in California. And their service was, like a normal Reformed service. And they read the word, they sang the word, they preached the word. They have had 3 different services that day, and we decided to join all 3 of them. They had a Spanish service, and there's a man named Sergio that preached. I didn't understand most of what he said, but I was amening him when he spoke of Jesus being fully God and fully man. I was able to translate that much of it, but it was great to join the saints. They have a very nice Spanish service there, had close to 20-25 people in that service. So it's just beautiful to see, saints gathering together, singing and praising God in Spanish. And these are saints that we will be gathered with in glory. After that, they had their normal morning service, and they actually have an afternoon service. So they have a lunch. Pastor Campbell was nice enough to provide Janice and I with some delicious chicken salad, and we had that for lunch. And then Pastor Campbell preached in the afternoon. Just a fantastic job. Really enjoyed it. It was very refreshing to be gathered because it was going to be, we knew it would be a long week, so it was good to gather with the saints. That evening, we gathered with others in our group, and we gathered for the Conservative Baptist Network meeting that would be that evening. And at that meeting, both Voddie Baucham and John MacArthur would be preaching, and they both did an excellent job. Prior to the meeting, we gathered with the purpose of passing out these pamphlets. They were made by James Silverman over at Free the States, and as always, when he makes stuff, it's very attractive, and it's well put together, and there's excellent information. And so this is the resolution that we were desiring to bring forward at the Southern Baptist Convention, and it's what we had submitted to the resolutions committee. And so our purpose in doing this was to bring information to the messengers, because if you only bring information during the actual business meeting, you're going to have at most 2 minutes to speak on whatever it is that you want to say. And when you have something that looks like this, you really don't have enough time in 2 minutes to really communicate that. So there's many volunteers that came out to help out. There were many interns with Free the States that came and helped pass things out. They were very busy. Janice and I helped out some of the time. I think some of the younger people were able to keep up the schedule a little better than we were, but I'd say at least the first day or day and a half, we were trying to help out in passing out some of the literature, and just had some great conversation. CBN was willing to work with us and let us pass out whatever we had at their meetings. Tom Ascol was on board with the resolution, and Bill Ascol was one of the signers and of the resolution. And Bill Ascol is Tom Ascol's brother. But after that, we went to the Conservative Baptist Network meeting, and it was interesting. It's a mixed group of people. You have within the Conservative Baptist Network people that fall into what you'd call like Baptist traditionalists, and those are going to be, the way most Baptist churches were in the latter part of the 80s and through the 90s. And I guess, I don't know, over the last 40 years, there's been a lot that fell into that category. They're kind of mainline Arminian. Of course, they're going to be 1-point Calvinists. They're going to believe, once saved, always saved. That baptized version of particular of rather of perseverance of the saints. But so you're going to have people that fall into that category. Someone like Paige Patterson, Chuck Kelly from over at NLBTS, and many others would fall into that. Even someone like Jack Graham would fall into that category of kind of this traditionalist Baptist and just kind of old school way of doing things. We don't fall into that category. We are Reformed, and so we are Calvinistic, and we're Reformed in our ecclesiology as well. So I won't go through all the differences here, but it was a mixed group, is my point in saying all of this. And when Voddie preached, he began his sermon like only Voddie would. And when Voddie gets up to preach, he's not going to get up and do a pep rally. He's not going to get up and just hoorah the troops and say, God needs us, we're going to do this. In fact, he's going to get up and he's going to be a shepherd. And he may not be the shepherd you want, but he's going to be the shepherd that you need. And he's going to be the shepherd the Lord ordained to be there. And the Lord ordained Voddie to be there. And he desired to shepherd the people here, and to begin his sermon by reminding them that as important as the work is that they were doing and that they were involved in, and as much as they believed in the cause they stood for, God didn't need them. And he began by saying in his sermon, he opens up and says, God doesn't need the SBC. And I would say 25% to half the room was just shocked that he said that. It's almost as though they didn't have a theological category for this idea that it may not be God's will for the SBC to turn in a more conservative direction. It may not be the Lord's plan. I mean, the Lord's plan may be for the SBC to become the PC USA. And who are we to question that? We just had our study on Job, right? And so we can relate to some of these ideas that, the Lord will do what he has so determined he will do. And what we're called to do is to glorify him and to be faithful in what he's given us to do with the task at hand. And he went on after that to say, not only does God not need the SBC, God doesn't need America. God doesn't need any of us. And he reminded everyone that God doesn't need him either. And he was reminded of that particularly whenever he became sick and had the issues with his heart just over the last year. So he's someone that can not only, believe this and preach this, but, it's something he's had to reflect on as well. And honestly, even his family has had to process through some of that. But the Lord has so chosen that Voddie will continue to preach. John MacArthur's sermon was just fantastic. I don't even have full categories. He had so much content in there that I need to listen to that sermon probably 3 times to really gather everything that he had in there. I just my opinion, I don't think everyone that was there was ready to sit under those sermons. They weren't ready to hear what those men said. But I think it's good that they did. I think it's healthy that they did that. But I'm saying this because this is going to come up later on, that I noticed in the room that people were very uncomfortable with what John MacArthur and Voddie preached. Secondly to that, let me see. No, actually, so next, what happened after that was the next morning we had the pastors conference. Part of the pastors conference was going on during the CBN meeting. That was kind of bold for them to schedule that right at the same time as the pastors conference, but that's what they chose to do. The next day they had the pastors conference. I sat through some of that. These aren't generally great conferences. They're generally kind of a mixture. They're hit and miss. Maybe it's a decent sermon. Maybe there's, a lot of them just aren't very good. It's not like you're going to G3 and sitting under solid preaching the whole time. You're kind of sitting under a lot of, Baptist good old boys that were chosen to preach for these times. And so that's what it is. They had a call for the vote for the nominations of president of the pastors conference. So you remember Voddie Baucham was nominated to be president of the pastors conference. and he was brought forward, and he ended up losing the vote. So he lost the vote to someone that someone I haven't heard of. But it wasn't without controversy, I think, with him being brought in, but he was clearly the better choice. I mean, Voddie's certainly one of the best preachers that has come out of Southern Baptist seminaries. But that was the choice they made, and so it was probably within a couple percentage points, and probably I think there was about 80 votes in between the two. So I didn't get down the exact numbers. After that, next morning, Tuesday morning, they had a conservative Baptist breakfast. We gathered before that to also pass out our pamphlets again prior to that and talk to anyone. Most people had pamphlets at that time. Many of them had been passed out and distributed. Again, I heard Tom Ascol speak again, and I noticed once again that many people, in my opinion, weren't comfortable with some of the things they were saying. And again, he was saying things that we would be very accustomed to hearing a preacher say, talking about God's sovereignty and God's rule and God's command and trusting in the Lord. These are doctrines that I believe are really helpful for the Christian in assurance. Remembering God's sovereignty and his rule is much, more helpful to me than looking at the back of a Bible that I signed at a certain age and it said something, or some kind of a card a pastor gave me just to remember what the word says about the Lord and his sovereignty and his power. And, Tom preached very well. So, we got out of that, and then the meeting began. It began with what I would say is there was unity in some ways and there's disunity in others. And one of the areas of controversy that was a theme throughout this convention was regarding the role of women in Christian ministry and whether or not a woman can hold the position of pastor. Because at the last meeting, a motion was brought forward to remove Saddleback Church from the Southern Baptist Convention because they had been involved in ordaining 3 women into ministry. So the Credentials Committee, which is the only way a church can be removed from the Southern Baptist Convention, was called to look into this, and the Credentials Committee did look into this, and the Credentials Committee came back with, I'm going to share this with you. This is what the Credentials Committee came back with. They came back with what we have in this video right here. I'm going to go ahead and play it for you. And then there's going to be a clip right after this of Al Mohler speaking from the floor. So Al Mohler put his neck out on this one. He's someone that'll speak at certain times, but for the most part, he's not someone who speaks out a whole lot or shakes the boat a whole lot. Some of us wish that he would have shaken the boat a little bit a couple years ago as critical race theory was coming up to the convention, and he did not, but he did here, and he stood up on the floor at a mic. Bill Ascol is going to give him his place in line. Bill Ascol is waiting in line. Many of us are in the mics at this point. We're waiting in line because we're desiring to bring a resolution out of committee. It's going to turn out we can't do that until 3 o'clock. And we're also desiring to change the order of the resolutions. I don't think we had any power to do that. At least that's what it looked like. But we were trying to do these things, trying to get our resolution brought forward because the committee had not accepted the resolution on the equal protection under the law for preborn children. So let me play this to you. This is the resolution committee's response to, not the resolutions committee, but rather the Committee on Credentials. This is their response to Saddleback Church being brought forward. And they're basically going to, you know what, I'm not going to play all this. I'm just going to tell you what happened. So basically what they do, you can go watch it yourself if you want. And you can see the name of the video at the top here. You can find it on YouTube. So basically the Committee on Credentials is going to come forward and make an argument that, Baptists interpret the word pastor a lot of different ways. And so they aren't really ready to go and make a decisive decision on this. So rather we need to create a committee that can go and study this and then bring some information back to the convention next year, so they can make a good decision on what the meaning of pastor is in the Baptist Faith and Message of 2000. So in true Baptist form, you have a committee that was formed out of another committee that is now asking for another committee to be formed so that we can have a good definition on what the word pastor means in the Baptist Faith and Message. So I'll go ahead and play this part, which will be Al Mohler responding to this motion made by the committee.
My name is Bill Ascol, pastor and messenger from the Bethel Baptist Church in Owasso, Oklahoma. I'm going to put my earplugs in so I don't sound like I'm drunk, all right? Now, what I want to speak to is a point of order with reference to the Resolutions Committee, but a brother is behind me who wants to speak to a point of order, and I'm going to yield to him because I love him dearly and thank God for him. I introduce to you Dr. Al Mohler.
Let me pause it right there. There was some question over, I don't know, should, so Bill gives up his place here. I can't imagine if Al Mohler walked up behind me and asked me for the mic, I can't imagine not giving it to him. So I definitely would have given up my spot for Al Mohler to speak, just because he's, good night. How many briefings have I listened to? How many times how many sermons have I listened to from Mohler? I've been very influenced by him. Even if I don't agree with everything he's ever done or said, I appreciate Al Mohler. And so here's Al Mohler speaking.
Mr. Chairman, I just come to this microphone in the event that it is in order for me to speak. I'm speaking as a messenger of the Third Avenue Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. I served on the committee that brought the Baptist Faith and Message in 2000 that was overwhelmingly adopted by this convention. My concern is, as a churchman, a theologian, and someone who loves this convention, as I know everyone in this room does, if we eventually have to form a study committee over every word in our confession of faith, then we're doomed and we're no longer a confessional people.
Dr. Mohler, with great love and respect, we would love to hear what you think on this. This is a point of order. What has been done out of order?
I was not seeking to make a point of order, sir. Sorry.
That was someone else.
Okay.
Would you stand by, please, just for a second, with all due respect?
I will stand by.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Mohler, would you, your microphone number 5, I recognize you again to continue speaking to this.
Thank you, sir. I certainly want to be in order with the rest of this convention.
Yes.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'll make this brief. I also appreciate the good work of the Credentials Committee and the spirit in which they bring this. But I am a confessionalist. This is a confessional denomination. We say what we believe in specific words that are the Baptist faith and message. The moment we start to, of necessity, have study committees to decide what the words mean what Southern Baptists said in the year 2000. At that time, the word pastor was used by the committee and adopted by the convention because we were told that is the most easily understood word among Southern Baptists for pastoral teaching leadership. I have to hope we still have that much clarity and that churches that use the word pastor mean it. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity.
All right, so that was Dr. Mohler's response. And let me make a little comment, by the way, regarding Bill's comment that he needed to put his earplugs in so that he didn't sound drunk. There is an echo that exists when you speak from the convention floor that is just unbelievable. It's hard to even describe. I would say that it is as though I was hearing an echo of my voice 4 or 5 times in a row. And so it's very distracting. And it's so much so that you really have to focus upon what you're saying and not what you sound like, because as we speak, we're hearing what we say and we're making adjustments to the tone and the cadence of whatever we're saying. And your brain can't do that whenever it's echoing 4 and 5 times. So that was the purpose for him using those earplugs. Right after this, Alan Greenway. So Albert Mohler is president of the Southern Baptist Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. Dr. Alan Greenway is president of Southwestern Theological Seminary, and he is going to go and he gives the following. Let me pull it onto the right video now. So Alan Greenway is going to give the following amendment to this recommendation by the Credentials Committee in response to what Al Mohler says. So,
yes. I'm Adam Greenway, messenger from the Travis
Adam
Avenue
Greenway.
Baptist Church in Fort Worth, Texas. And I would like to move an amendment to the Credentials Committee recommendation. What I would like to do would be, after Louisiana, change the word "a" to "any," change recommendation to add a parenthesis as close parenthesis, providing clarity regarding the, strike the rest of the language, and instead insert the language of the Constitution of the Southern Baptist Convention, Article 3, Section 1, Subsection 1, has a faith and practice which closely identifies with the convention's adopted statement of faith, period. And if I get a second, I'd like to speak to this amendment.
Is there a second? You have it, Dr. Greenway.
And I offer this as what I hope will be a friendly amendment to the Credentials Committee. I've talked with Chair Lady Cooper, who I have great respect for. It's clear to me from the intent of this committee's work that the issue that they face is one that is serious and one that we should give every resource to this committee to be able to do. But I don't think it is merely the issue of the question about whether a woman pastor is in conformity with the guidelines of this convention, because, and again, we've heard language even earlier talking about how we are a confessional convention. Well, that means a variety of different things, but it does not mean that any church must proactively affirm the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 in order to be a cooperating Southern Baptist church. Article 3 of the convention says that a church must have a faith and practice which closely identifies with the convention's adopted statement of faith. Before coming back to Texas, I spent 17 years in Kentucky, and there are Kentucky Baptist churches that affirm the First London Confession, the Second London Confession, the New Hampshire Confession, the Abstract of Principles, every iteration of the Baptist Faith and Message, some that have written their own confession, some that have no written confession. The guidance for the Credentials Committee needs to be more in terms of what is intended by how closely identified with the convention statement of faith a church must be in order to be a cooperating Southern Baptist church. That is the issue at stake that the Credentials Committee needs, and I would move this amendment to give them the tools they need and to have a task force come back next year with how this convention should determine cooperation, not where we are trying to do authoritative interpretations of the Baptist Faith and Message in a way to where no Baptist magisterium exists by our polity.
Would the committee like to respond to this friendly amendment? All right, we're going to get this on the screen so that everybody can see this at the same time, all right?
all right, so they accepted the Greenway amendment as friendly. However, it still failed. The convention was not interested in forming a committee out of the Credentials Committee to study the meaning of the word pastor in the Baptist faith and message. So there is a lot of talk of things drifting and moving in the Southern Baptist Convention. And I think we can all find things on the internet that I'm not going to go into now that would point to areas where there is liberalism and drift within the Southern Baptist Convention. But it is clear that in Anaheim, California, they overwhelmingly voted that they were not interested in bringing a committee to study the word pastor and kicking this down the road for another year. So let me give you my comments on that real quick, because what's going to happen right after this is going to be a presidential vote. Tom Ascol is going to lose that vote. He's going to overwhelmingly lose that vote. There's going to be someone that is brought in at the last moment.
I'm sorry.
Pretty much that day. And they are going to run.
I'm not sure I understand.
They're going to run as they're going to run for president. And this is a man named Frank Cox. He is a man who's been in the convention for many years. He falls in that line of traditionalists that I told you about. And so you have someone that was brought in here the day of the vote, from what I can tell, and he pulled 13% of the first vote. And that seems pretty significant. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that when I was sitting at the CBN meetings, there were some people that didn't seem comfortable with what Voddie Baucham, John MacArthur, and Tom Ascol said as they spoke. I don't think, as I said, they had the categories for this. And so I can't help but think that was some of what led to Frank Cox running. There was then so you had four people that were there running for president. Bart Barber, pastor out of Farmersville. He's a kind of a small to mid-size Baptist church in the Texas town of Farmersville. You had Tom Ascol over in Cape Coral, Florida. We all know him. Robin Hathaway, that is a former IMB missionary. And I think he was in leadership at IMB, if I remember right. And then you have this man, Frank Cox, who is a pastor in California. And so there was a runoff between Tom and Bart Barber. And in the runoff, I think Bart Barber ended up pulling like 62% of the vote, and Tom Ascol ended up pulling 38% of the vote. And so let me give you my thoughts on what that means. It means some things, and it doesn't mean a lot of others. Willie Rice, who was nominated to be president prior to Bart Barber, Willie Rice ended up, I'm not going to go into that, but he ended up stepping down over some different reasons. And he's one that would have been more moderate than Bart Barber. Bart Barber is not someone that I feel like is in the category of a liberal or even a moderate. He is, from all I can tell, a conservative man, and a man who holds to what you would generally think of as conservative ideas as far as theology goes, as far as church ecclesiology. He's said at least twice I can think of now that he believes the Saddleback Church should be disfellowshipped from the Southern Baptist Convention because they have ordained 3 women. And so Bart Barber is going to be the person who, as president, chooses the committee on nominations. Committee of nominations will choose the committee on credentials. The committee of credentials will make the determination on Saddleback. So it is my thought that Saddleback Church is going to get disfellowship from the Southern Baptist Convention here in short order. Whenever this committee is formed, the convention's already spoken and said they're not interested in compromising on the ordination of women. And so I just can't imagine that Saddleback is going to stay in fellowship, which will likely have an effect on other churches in the convention. Let me go ahead and show you something interesting that happened later on. Janice and I were sitting in front of mic 3, and what I'm about to show you is really incredible. It's really incredible. So let me let me find this. And this is it. So we're sitting there behind mic 3, which is where we had chosen to sit. And behind mic 3, having technical issues here. Behind mic 3, here's Rick Warren. And Rick Warren's up on the screen. And Rick Warren got, you know, in my opinion, this is out of order. I guess when you're Rick Warren and you sell as many books as you do, and you've been around as long as you have, and done as much in the convention as you have, then you get, you know, get to speak an extra 5 minutes, because he had what sounded like to me close to 6 or 7 minutes of speech. And out of the clear blue, not really in order at the time to do this, but I'm going to play this and you can think about what he says for a minute. I was just astounded as this was happening. And I'm even doing the math on some of the things that he's saying as he's talking. And it's really shocking. So this is Rick Warren right behind Janice and I at microphone 3 at the convention.
Linda Cooper, the chairperson of the Credentials Committee.
Oh, they're having to have a conversation here. I clicked the video too soon, but I believe it's coming up.
157 votes.
We're .30. Rick is at microphone number 3. I recognize you to speak.
Thank you. You know, first, everybody, welcome to Orange County Southern Baptist. Of 149 Southern Baptist churches here, 90 of them started by Saddleback Church. Wow. You know, it's customary for a guy who's about to be hung to let him say his dying words. I have no intention of defending myself. I have taught my kids and grandkids for years. I am most like Christ when I refuse to defend myself.
Okay. Now you go ahead and think if that's what he does, because this has been put in the category of what I would most consider to be a humble brag. No, I'm not going to defend myself. No, I'm not going to say anything about this. Well, let's watch it.
The Bible says Jesus spoke not a word unto them when Pilate accused him of all kinds of things. So I have no intention.
So you compare what he does here to what Jesus does before Pilate, and even the circumstances that Jesus was under as he stood before Pilate, and the circumstances that Rick Warren and Saddleback Church are under as he stands here.
I have most of you on my mailing list anyway, and I can write you and tell you what I believe about the gift of pastoring as opposite from the office of pastoring. But I'm not here to talk about that. Lunch.
And that's something you're going to find biblical anyway, a distinction between the gift of pastoring and the office of pastoring, or even something that we need to be doing. He's playing around with words at that point. So
I wrote you a love letter, and I'd like for my possibly likely last convention to read it to you. Kay and I could have not built Saddleback Church to its size and influence in any other denomination. I love Southern Baptist. I am a 4th generation Southern Baptist pastor. My great-grandfather was led to Christ by Charles Spurgeon and sent to America as a church planter. Saddleback was sponsored by the North American Mission Board. I served on the staff of the California State Convention and the Texas State Convention as a teenager. Billy Graham picked me up when I was 18, and for the next 52 years mentored me, because I started at 16 years old, hired by the California Convention to preach youth revivals, and I had preached over 120 harvest crusades before I was 20. Billy took this long-haired, skinny Californian and mentored me for the next 52 years. Here's my love letter to you, because I really am grateful. If this is my last convention, because of Southern Baptist polity, I was allowed to serve one church for life. That's not possible in most denominations. And grew it to become the largest church in this convention. Because Southern Baptist gave me a passion for evangelism and mission, we baptized 56,631 new believers. And as a Southern Baptist Church, sent 26,869 members overseas to 197 nations. Because Southern Baptist taught me the value of a membership covenant. 78,157 members of our church signed our membership covenant after taking a 4-hour membership class. Because Southern Baptist taught me to emphasize the priority of Bible study. We now have 9,173 home Bible studies in homes in 162 Southern California cities. Because Southern Baptist taught me the value of church planting. As I already mentioned, we planted 90 in Orange County alone and literally thousands around the world. Because Southern Baptist taught me to honor and love the local church, I've had the privilege for 43 years of training 1.1 million pastors.
How can he say this? How can he say that he has trained 1.1 million pastors? Someone did the math on that, and I don't know how accurate it was because I'm not going to bother doing the math, but they said basically that means that he's been training 3 pastors every single hour, 24 hours a day. So even during his sleep for the past 43 years, which is just kind of absurd. Even this planting thousands of churches, I don't understand how you can claim to have planted thousands of churches. I mean, we as a church, we've planted 2 churches. And even still, I mean, we were supporting the church down in Costa Rica and Miramar, and they planted a church in Liberia, and we were sending them support money through this time. And we're now sending support money to the church in Liberia and the church in Miramar. But we don't count that as a church plant. I mean, we were supporting a church plant. We were giving money to a church plant. I mean, we went down there and helped with teaching at one point, but to claim that we planted that church as though those were our members we sent out to join the other church, and we had, sent out the elder to go plant that other church, that is not something that I think we can claim. And I think that is, well, it's just not something that we would do. I don't know how he comes up with this number of planting thousands of churches and planting 90 churches in Southern California, and the 1.1 million pastors that he trained. All I can just hope is that there are someone wrote too many zeros down, because even if you claim to have trained 1,000 pastors, that would be an astounding number. It gets even better. Let's keep going.
Sorry, friends, that's more than all the seminaries put together.
So more than all 6 Southern Baptist seminaries put together. That is what Saddleback Church is claiming to have done. They have trained more people for ministry than all of the seminaries combined. You don't even have to really think on that very long to recognize that whatever he's claiming he did in regard to training these pastors is not anything close to what the seminaries have done, where they're conferring degrees upon men and for the purpose of placing them in ministry.
I owe you all so much. So I sincerely say, thank you, Southern Baptist, for shaping my life. And in closing, I want to ask you to consider a couple questions. You're never going to find another Baptist who agrees with you completely on everything. There are Baptist brothers here today who don't believe Jesus died for the whole world, but we imagine somehow get along with them. So as Western culture grows more dark, more evil, more secular, We have to decide, are we going to treat each other as allies or adversaries? Second, since this is the year 2022, that means we are 2022 years from the birth of Christ. Now we know Christ started his ministry at 30 years of age. Luke tells us that, had a 3.5-year ministry. Christ died in AD 33. He was resurrected in AD 33. He gave the Great Commission in AD 33. He sent the Holy Spirit and started the church in AD 33. That means 2033, just 11 years from today, is the 2000th anniversary of the Great Commission. I hope one of you, because I won't be here next year, will make a resolution that Baptists take the next 10 years to finish the task of the Great Commission in our generation before the 2000th anniversary of the church. Are we going to keep bickering over secondary issues? Or are we going to keep the main thing the main thing? We need to finish the task, and that will make God smile. Thank you, everybody. I love you.
So at that point, Rick Warren gets walked to the front near the stage and walked back behind the curtain. And I don't know what happened with him from that point on. I did mention something not quite right. So actually, this is when the presidential vote happened. So it was after this hoorah that Rick Warren gave that there was the presidential vote, and that's where Tom Ascol was not successful in that. Something else I want to bring your attention to was the seminary presidents always have a chance to speak. And so one of the things that we had desired to do was to ask the presidents questions on their view regarding equal protection of the law, because that's the resolution that we were trying to bring forward. Alan Mohler had spoken very positively of equal protection under the law, probably with 3 to 4 weeks ago. He had spoken on the briefing. It was a Thursday. I about had to pull my car over. I couldn't believe what he was saying. And so he came right out and said, although we need to think through how this works and, the details of how this is adjudicated in a post-Roe era, the idea that, a woman would not be morally culpable after she hired someone to take the life of her child is just absurd. And that's me paraphrasing what he said. But let me go ahead and walk through here. So you're going to see questions asked to Dr. Allen over at Midwestern, Dr. Aiken over at Southeastern, and then Al Mohler over at Southern Seminary. And so I'm going to ask the first question to Al Mohler, not Al Mohler, to Dr. Allen. Let me cue that one up. And here it is. They just finished with their presentation, and I'm going to ask him the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be delighted to answer any questions the messengers may have for me today.
Microphone 7A, do you have a question?
Yes. My name is Corey Smith. I'm a messenger from Heritage Baptist Church in Shreveport, Louisiana. First off, I want to say thank you, Dr. Allen, for your clear biblical stance on the office of pastor being only for women or being only for qualified men. So thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for correcting yourself.
Yes. But my question is related to why many of us are here, and it's in concern to sexual abuse. I know that your entity wants to care well for those who have been sexually abused. Yesterday, a sexual abuse survivor, while at the mic, had her mic cut off, silenced, interrupted, and not allowed to finish her statement. My question is in relation to this. Is this how sexual abuse survivors are treated at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary? Or will they be treated like this? Or will they be allowed to speak and not shut down by those in power as Jennifer Buck was yesterday?
Sir, you are not allowed to mention other members' names. We will allow the president to speak to your question.
Sorry about that. I didn't quite have that video queued up, and it's going to be easier for me just to let it play until it gets to the part where I ask the question. And I'm not going to go into explaining what's going on in that last question. It's going to take too much time to unpack what that question even meant. So
Thank you for your question, Brother Messenger. I have 3 daughters. I have a wife, 23 years. Praise God, none of them have experienced the horrors of the lady you referenced or the many other victims.
oh, he almost said a name.
But I can tell you, as one who has 3 daughters,
So by the way, just so you know, this has been a theme going out through it, not to mention people's names, that the Ed Litton has been saying, don't mention people's names at any time. It's, I don't think that's really a rule, but I think, I don't know. That's the rule that he had, was that you can't ever mention anyone's name. You're not supposed to. This is supposed to be very gentlemanly. This is supposed to have a certain level of decorum, and so you're not supposed to be bashing other people. It's not supposed to be like the British Parliament. It's supposed to be because they're not following Robert's Rules of Order over in the British Parliament. But this is supposed to have a little more decorum than that, where you're not disparaging other people. Ed Litton is probably being a little more strict on that and just saying, don't say anyone's name at all. So,
and a wife I love dearly, I'm committed personally to doing everything I can to protect them. And similarly, as one who's responsible for now an institution approaching 5,000 students in enrollment and hundreds of employees, I want to do, and we are doing, everything we can to not just honor Scripture and the law, but to also fulfill our personal Christian and pastoral responsibilities to those to whom the Lord has entrusted to us. So, brother, I thank you for the question. I am confident that we all are in a growth process on this, as we have been in recent years. How best to serve, how best to equip, how best to protect. And so I'm committed to serving Southern Baptists in every way, and certainly including this way that we've touched on yesterday and I've now spoken to today. Thank you for your question.
3A, do you have a question?
yes, my name is Aaron Wright, messenger from Grace Family Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. Dr. Allen, I want to say to you that our church really appreciates all the work that you have done. We appreciate many of the professors that you've put in place, the books that they've published. I won't say their names, but we really appreciate all the work that they've done and that you're doing. Additionally, we appreciate the joint statement that you signed along with the other seminary presidents, speaking your position on critical race theory. That was very important, and putting together such a statement allowed our church to see where you stand. We were able to read what you wrote. We didn't have to think, we didn't have to guess. We didn't have to look at a blog that a seminary president wrote and then think, well, where does Dr. Allen stand? My question to you is this: would you please share with us where you stand on equal protection under the law for all image bearers, as well as the abolition of abortion, so that our church can have clarity on where you stand on these issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I get to the specific question, a couple of words conceptually about how I seek to answer such things. I believe my role as a seminary president is not to issue encyclicals from Kansas City directing the churches what they are to do and to believe. I believe my responsibility in Kansas City is to serve the churches for the SBC, but I also serve them faithfully by giving candid answers to candid questions. I serve them best by speaking appropriately to convictional issues, especially that run afoul of our Baptist Faith and Message 2000. And that's why I eagerly yesterday tweeted out my concern about confusion around female pastors. And that's a part of my role as a seminary president, is not just to adhere, but to personally advocate, and I'm happy to do that. But when and how best to do that is an ongoing reflection. And so that is a work we all have to work through as those who are entrusted with leadership roles at Southern Baptist. To answer your question, I am absolutely pro-life from the womb to the tomb. From the moment of conception, all the way through natural death. I am absolutely pro-life. I fully affirm and believe the respective resolutions this convention has passed over the years in this regard. And I stand to lead an institution that's committed to honoring life every way, especially those most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable of all are those who are yet to be born. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. I'm going to ask the parliamentarian to come and.
Okay, so he wasn't ready for that question, I'm sure. But he didn't really answer it. He didn't really deal with it. He just kind of said, well, I'm pro-life, and that's good. I'm glad that he's pro-life. But my question was more in the area of, how do you understand equal protection under the law? Do you believe that we should be defending those that are in the womb in the same way that we defend those that are outside of the womb? Should we treat all humans with equal protection? So I understand he might not have fully thought through it, and additionally, he might not have been ready for that question at that time, but I appreciate him giving an answer. So next, Danny Aiken is asked a question. First, I'm going to show you one he's asked by Alan Nelson, and this is staying on that same theme regarding the ordination of women in pastoral ministry. And then you're going to see, I believe it's Brandon Allen. So this is Alan Nelson, and then Brandon Allen is going to ask a question to him regarding equal protection. So let's start with the question from Alan Nelson.
Thank you, Dr. Aiken. Microphone 8A, do you have a question for Dr. Aiken?
Yes, sir, I do. My name is Alan Nelson. I'm a messenger from Perryville Second Baptist Church. Dr. Aiken, my question is this: do you think that there's any connection between your institution conferring degrees upon women for pastoral ministry and this convention's confusion about what a pastor is and whether or not a woman can be a pastor? Do you see any connection at all between your institution giving women degrees for pastoral ministry and our misunderstanding about what pastors are? Thank you.
Well, I can't speak to whether there is a connection. What I can tell you is we allow women to enter into any degree program at our institution. We do provide classes that are specifically for women that are going to have a teaching ministry as a woman to women, but we do not endorse anyone to ministry. That's not what your seminaries do. But we're also crystal clear. Women are welcomed at Southeastern Seminary. We want them to come and be well prepared biblically and theologically in every area. And they do know in advance that we are a loving, gracious, complementarian school, and that may be why we have more women studying at Southeastern today than at any time in our history. And so, ladies, come on, you're welcome.
Microphone number 2, do you have a question for Dr. Aiken?
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Brandon Allen. I'm a messenger from Ecclesia Muskogee in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Dr. Aiken, thank you for your leadership in this convention and for all your labors to train up faithful men who will be able to teach others also. As a man of great influence here, would you speak to your personal position on the abolition of abortion? Specifically, do you believe our existing homicide code that protects you and me should be equally applied to children in the womb?
And so he does a better job of asking this question than I did. My question was more just kind of open and just, ask the question, where do you stand on the abolition of abortion and equal protection under the law? And so Brandon Allen here has, created his question in such a way. So it's a little more specific here, that he's not just saying, hey, do you want to protect children? Are you pro-life? Do you love babies? He's saying specifically, do you believe that children in the womb should be protected with laws that already exist in the homicide code. And some of this wording is helpful because, and I've run into this as well, that when you start using words like, do you want to charge someone with murder? Well, that's a specific line in the homicide code. And so you're talking about a particular line in the homicide code, and you have in the homicide code things that are ranging, at least my understanding is, down from manslaughter, slaughter, all the way up to capital murder. And so the question is, do you think there should be equal protection? The reason why this is controversial, because you may be saying like, what's going on? Why is this controversial? And you'll see this more specifically when I talk about the RNC convention at the very end of this video, that we're creating laws that are purposely being written in such a way as to say that someone who goes and hires someone to take the life of their child should not in any way be held criminally liable. There should be no consequences whatsoever. And this is something that is, I think this is one of the easiest arguments to make, equal protection, because all of the arguments that you're going to use to someone regarding the respect and value that a child in the womb should be given because they're made in the image of God are the same arguments that you're going to use to argue that someone who is seeking to take the child's life, either through having an abortion themselves that they perform or by hiring someone else to perform that abortion, you don't really have any ground to stand on to say there should be no moral culpability. However, that's kind of where the argument is right now, that abortion should be illegal, but a mother who either intentionally performs the abortion herself and takes the life of the child, or a mother who goes and hires someone else to do this should never be held morally culpable. I wrote a blog on this just a couple weeks ago, trying to show how inconsistent this is. It's inconsistent with God's law. It's inconsistent with equal weights and measures. It's inconsistent with how you view women. You're viewing women as just being victims, as a class of victims. Regardless individually of what may happen, things can happen in particular situations, but it's not right to view women as a whole as a class of victims. That's showing a lack of respect, in my opinion, of people that are made in the image of God, to view them in that way. Let me go ahead and let you hear Dr. Aiken's response to Brandon Allen's question.
Thank you, my brother. I'll reiterate what Dr. Allen said a moment ago. I have been a staunchly pro-life advocate all of my life. My wife and I have given thousands and thousands of dollars to crisis pregnancy centers. I have written letters to my senators and my representatives. I have never, and would I never, ever vote for a pro-choice candidate under any circumstances or in any context. In addition to that, I cannot say it any better. I believe in protecting human life from the moment of conception to natural death. And that is where I stand on the issue of abortion.
Okay. You didn't answer his question, dodged his question. So let's move on to questions for Al Mohler. Al Mohler gives, so prior to each of these questions, there's been a whole presentation that the seminary presidents gave, and they, used it for, but they can use it for whatever they want. I mean, they get their bully pulpit for the time being, and they can say what they want. Most of them just talk about their seminary and what's happening there. Al Mohler chose to use it to give an apologetic for biblical roles in ministry, and biblical roles regarding who can hold the office of pastor, and the ways in which it's not right or appropriate for us to make a distinction between the office and activities of the pastor. So let me go ahead and with this next question that is asked by Brett Baggett. So of Rescue Those, he runs
Amen.
He's a pastor, and he also runs a ministry called Rescue Those. They advocate for the life of the preborn.
Microphone 1A, do you have a question for Dr. Albert Mohler?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Moeller. I'm over here to your left, way over here. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate your hard work at Southern all these years. I especially appreciate your recent episode of the briefing during which you made the following helpful and important statement on abortion. Quote, "There are many situations in which it would well seem that agency has been exercised by a woman, and she should be held as complicit in either the death of her unborn child or the effort to secure such a death. The law, in its own way, is capable of making these discernments." End quote. Thank you for that. Now, my question has two parts. One just has to do with you as president of Southern, the second with Southern itself. Part one. What are your thoughts as president of Southern Seminary on abolishing abortion by applying the same homicide code that protects you and me to all image bearers from the moment of fertilization? Second part, what is Southern Seminary teaching in order to equip students to be faithful to Christ in the midst of this abortion holocaust, even by preparing them to minister the gospel at abortion clinics? Dr. Moeller, I just want to make sure that my question is clear. I'm not asking if Southern or you are pro-life, because I believe
Thank you.
Southern and you are.
Thank you for that question. Dr. Moeller?
No, I think I understand the question, and it's an interesting time for all these things to be discussed in a different context in our country, because even as
I'm going to say, I'm not sure if he ran out of time or if they just decided you've talked enough, and you're not asking a question anymore. So I'm not sure what happened. I didn't actually time how long he had and whether or not he used his full 2 minutes. During those times, you don't have opportunity to say whatever you want. You're allowed to ask a question. You can preface your question with something, but you don't have a guaranteed 2 minutes that they're going to allow you to speak. And it's up to the chair to make that determination regarding whether or not you get to keep speaking. So, but the question was asked, and here is the great response that Al Moeller gives to everyone. I'm really, this was worth the trip right here. Everything that happened, there's many things that were disappointing. There's things that I would have liked to have happened differently, but the fact that Brett asked Al Moeller this question, and Al Moeller stood on the stage at that podium and said what he said to the entirety of the convention was worth everything we had done. So I really appreciate this.
Baptists have been meeting here, we've been meeting here with the knowledge that the Supreme Court is, if not while we're here, shortly after we go home, about to release the decision in the Dobbs case, which is likely, we hope and pray, to reverse Roe v. Wade after nearly 50 years of American carnage. So we have to hope and pray that that will happen. The law, as I just said, I didn't mean to bring it up for this reason, but the Moynihan law also prevails here in that politics is downstream from culture. So politics is a matter of negotiation to try, according to the law, to achieve maximum justice and righteousness. To answer your question specifically, looking at the clock, warned by the president about long-windedness, as I look to the clock, deservedly, Mr. President, as I look to the clock, I simply want to say, I understand what you're asking, and we understand homicide is the death or the killing of a human being. An unborn baby, I believe from the moment of conception to natural death, is a human being deserving of that protection. The law has means of making discernments and distinctions in agency, and that means moral responsibility, and in context. How we make that apply in a question of abortion, where even in terms of say, a miscarriage, things may be difficult sometimes medically to define. I believe the law is capable of making those distinctions. In the same way we have different degrees of murder, we have different kinds of indictments possible in criminal charges. So in other words, I believe that there are many cases in which demonstrably there is not just an abortionist who should face criminal consequences, but a woman seeking an abortion. So that is something that we believe the law should pursue. We also understand that that is not something that is likely to come in all 50 states anytime soon. The moment, for instance, the Dobbs decision comes down, if Roe v. Wade is reversed, it's going to mean a state by state battle for the sanctity of human life. And so I am very happy with the law that was just passed and very clearly supported the law just passed in Oklahoma, which calls for a total ban on abortion. I think pro-life states are going to be able to move pretty quickly. And then we've got Illinois, Rhode Island, dare I say, California and New York that are so committed to the culture of death on the issue of abortion, they're actually inviting persons to come from pro-life states to California to have abortions that the governor of California says he even wants the state of California to pay for, even talking about paying for transportation. The culture of life and the culture of death will never be more clearly before our eyes than what we're likely to see in coming days if Roe v. Wade is reversed, and we must hope and pray that it is. And at Southern Seminary, we are seeking to raise up ministers of the gospel, missionaries and others who firmly understand what's at stake in the issue of abortion. And right now we have students who day by day and week by week are on the front lines of this battle, along with faculty, including outside the abortion clinics, bearing witness to life. Mr. President, thank you for the honor of responding.
Thank you, Dr. Mueller. That concludes our question.
Al Mohler, in that response to the question that was asked by Brett, did put himself on the line in certain ways. It's something that, I mean, I could speculate that, maybe I won't speculate. You know, I think it's, from my perspective, I think it's clear that this is an untenable position, this idea that women are never going to be morally culpable. Anyone who has spent any time at all in front of an abortion clinic knows very well that all of the women going in there are not victims, and they should not be placed in the category of victim. I was in front of an abortion clinic just a couple weeks ago with Don Carnes, and there was a woman that just began to dance around the parking lot regarding, you know, why what she was doing was legitimate and right. And our conversation began, you know, she said, well, are you gonna help these women? Are you gonna provide services for them? And I said, well, absolutely. Yeah, I can connect them with a pregnancy center. We've worked for many years there. I serve on the board of a pregnancy center. I would be more than happy to connect you with those services. And she said, oh yeah, well, are you going to adopt all of these babies? Are you ready to adopt a baby? And well, that was an easy response. I was like, yeah, we adopted a child 6 years ago. And by the way, just so you know, all I would have to do is send out one Facebook post, and there would be families that would be willing to line up for every one of the children in the abortion clinic. I mean, it would be hands down totally simple. And those two questions didn't go as she wanted. And then she began to attack me for being a man and not being a woman. And it ended with her dancing her way in there in the entirety of the parking lot, which normally in an abortion clinic you'll have cars that are full of those that are helping, that either drove in there. So it's going to be other women. It's going to be grandparents of the child that's getting aborted, or, you know, of course, parents of the woman going in there, or so oftentimes boyfriends are the ones that are sitting in the cars. And so they're able to hear us as we're speaking, and they rolled down their windows and cheered this woman as she danced her way into the abortion clinic. And that's what I mean. It's a totally untenable position. This idea that every single woman everywhere, if they are engaging in abortion, are not victims and should never be held morally culpable is totally absurd. Totally absurd. Thank you, Al Mohler, for coming down on that. Thank you, Al Mohler, for speaking on that. I do appreciate him doing that, and I appreciate him speaking clearly on that. That's twice at this convention that he has come out and publicly spoken on something that wasn't without any cost at all. So next, what happened next in the convention was there was the chairman of not the ULC, the resolutions committee, which is Bart Barber, who was elected to be president of the convention, did something that, in my opinion, was charitable. And I don't think anyone can say against him that he was trying to keep anyone running at the clock so that no one had any ability to bring any resolutions out of committee. He gave an extra 10 minutes so that he requested an extra 10 minutes be given so that anyone that wanted to bring resolutions out of committee could. And that's what we wanted to do. Our resolution was not accepted by the committee. It was turned down. And so the only way that we could get it brought forward would be to do what we did the year before on the resolution on the abolition of abortion, which would be to have the floor by 2/3 vote, call the committee to pull the resolution out onto the floor for debate. Now, there was a difference last year in that I'm only speaking what my opinion is as to what happened, that Bill Ascol was given a personal privilege to speak actually a few different times during the convention on bringing his resolution out of committee. He did a really good job at it. At one point, he even held someone who's famously known as Baby Charlie. And it was the baby that, Bill Ascol had next to him at the mic as he spoke. And Baby Charlie will be famous forever because of for that purpose. And his parents are even just known as Charlie's parents at this point. We don't even remember their names. We just know, hey, that's Charlie's mom, that's Charlie's dad. But Charlie played a very important role at that time because that was the baby next to Bill when Bill was able to speak on the resolution and pull it out of committee. And we had a very extensive debate on that, and both sides were able to lay down their views on that. And the ULC laid down their views on that last summer. This year did not go the same way. We did not ask for personal privilege, and I don't know if we should have done that or not. Robert's Rules of Order or something I need to study more on. I seriously doubt we would have been given personal privilege to speak about it coming out of committee. So it was brought forward. And basically, I mean, this is many different people. The people getting called on just happen to be the ones that are at the mic that get called on. There are, I don't know, I think there's like 10 mics in the room. And so different people are at different mics. And it just happens to be either whoever the chairman calls on, or whoever maybe one of the committees wants called on, or it's also whoever is first in the queue to get called on. And so Janice was the one that got called on. And so here is Janice calling for, this is Janice calling for the resolution to be brought out of committee. And here is that clip.
Are there any further motions related to resolutions? 3A, would you please state your name, your church, and your motion?
Hello, my name is Janice Wright. I'm a messenger from Grace Family Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. I'm making a motion that we take the Southern Baptist Resolution on equal protection of law for preborn children out of committee and onto the floor for a vote and discussion.
Is there a second? There is a second.
So you'll see there, the parliamentarian just told Ed Litton that this is not debatable. That means that Janice is not allowed to speak on the motion that she just made. And so rather it just has to go forward as a vote. It's going to go forward as a vote. It requires 2/3 of the vote, and they're not going to have that. So it doesn't get 2/3 of a vote. And furthermore, Janice can testify to you that the echo is real. There is a real echo that is there. And it is, again, like I said, it is, until you experience it, it is really shocking. And you try to prep yourself as much as you can, but as you're speaking, and the words are just resonating in your ears and in your mind, it is unbelievably distracting. So Janice was the one that was called on, and they brought it up for a vote, and it clearly did not make 2/3, so it was not brought out of committee, which would have allowed it to come forward and be given an opportunity to be spoken upon So sadly, we didn't have an opportunity to speak on this resolution, and the argumentation that you can give for equal protection under the law is a really simple argument. It is not a complicated argument, and there are very strong arguments you can make, which you will see coming forward right after this. So right after this, they then went into the next thing I'm going to talk about, rather. So everything I'm saying may not be the next thing that happened in the convention. This is something that happened over 2 days for the convention, and then 4 days, the 2 days for the convention, 2 days for the pastors conference. But you have this ending part, which again, I would say second to Al Mohler saying what he said, the interaction with the RLC was just gold, because there is, the RLC, I mean, came out from the floor last year and spoke against the resolution on abolishing abortion. They lost that. The resolution went forward. They then continued to write against the resolution on abolishing abortion and continued to write against equal protection under the law for all image bearers. And they continued to write against the abolition of abortion. And, you know, I think it's one thing when someone is holding, you know, these views that are very inconsistent in incrementalism. I think it's a whole another area, although it may be consistent with what they're doing. I think it's a whole nother area when they're openly advocating against the abolition of abortion. I find that to be just astounding. And about a month and a half ago, the ERLC had advocated against a bill on abolishing abortion that had made it further than any bill has ever made it in the United States anywhere. And this bill made it to the floor of the House in Louisiana. And there is a pastor here, and his name is Brian Gunter. And he's going to be, I think he's going to be one of the first ones that I queue up. And he's going to ask the ERLC a question on this, because the ERLC joined in lobbying against this bill. They had the votes to pass this in the House. I don't know if it would have passed in the upper chamber of Louisiana or not, but they had the votes to pass in the House. And the ERLC joined with the National Right for Life and many other groups, and Planned Parenthood would have been one of those lobbying against it as well, against the abolition of abortion in this state. And it was not popular. And I think there's a lot of people that are looking around, they're like, what's going on? Like, I thought we wanted to end abortion. Why would you be fighting against abolishing abortion? So let me cue that next question up. The ERLC in this next series, I'm just gonna play this, and I clicked on the wrong button, so sorry about that. I'm just gonna play this, and we're just gonna go through the questions that are asked, because there's gonna be 1, 2, 3. There's gonna be a fourth person. I don't know who he is, but he's gonna ask a really strong question as well. And the ERLC is going to do their best to answer these questions, but you're going to find that they're dodging these questions, and they're not dealing with, for the most part, dealing with the content of these questions. So this first one up, I believe this is Brian Gunter. So let's go to that one.
For the ERLC on 2A. Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. My name is Brian Gunter. I am a messenger and the senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Livingston, Louisiana. Earlier this year, I worked with my state legislators to introduce House Bill 813 in the Louisiana legislature. HB 813 was a bill that sought to immediately end all abortion in my state by providing equal protection to the child in the womb. Simply stated, if life begins at conception, then our laws should protect life from the moment of conception. So you can imagine my surprise when you signed a letter dated May 12th, urging all state lawmakers across America to oppose this bill and others like it, because it would make it a crime for a woman to kill her own child by abortion. I thought that Southern Baptists, when we say we're pro-life, we mean that no person should be able to murder an innocent child in the womb. So this is my question. Is it really your position that the mother who willfully kills her own child by abortion is never guilty before God, and she should never face any consequences under the law?
Thank you, brother, for that question. We're in a little bit of an unorthodox format here because I thought questions were coming at
Let me
the end.
explain, first of all, the chair made a mistake in interrupting at the time we interrupted to give the report on the election for second vice president. There was, we moved on thinking the ERLC presentation was complete, and it isn't. It would be best if they made their presentation and then come back to your question. Would you be welcome? Would you welcome that, sir?
Well, Mr. President, I'll take it now. I'll answer it now.
Right ahead.
Yep. Brother, here's the deal. We agree on the bottom line. We want abortion ended. We want it ended today. We want it ended tomorrow. We want to end it as soon as humanly possible. But while we hold fast to that goal and continually shout, that is what we want, why not support legislation that promises to save one more life in any context? I will say this, to get the record straight, no letter was sent directly to Louisiana about a Louisiana piece of legislation. Right after the draft opinion from the Supreme Court was leaked, National Right to Life approached us, as well as 75 other pro-life organizations from around the country to say, hey, this would make sense, since functionally, if this were to be law, or this were to be the final decision, abortion will be returned to the states. It would seem to make sense that we send a letter to legislative leaders in all 50 states to let them know what the principles of the pro-life movement are. And so in a state like California, for example, where we are, it makes sense to send that because they're going to have this issue right in front of them. And in a state like California, they're going to have to take any available win where they can. Here's the reality. You're not going to get me to say that I want to throw mothers behind bars.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interact with this as he's talking, and I probably will do this on other points here, and I'm not going to deal with every error that is here. That letter that was written and signed by the ERLC was very influential on the leaders within the legislature in Louisiana. So that needs to be understood. It was very, very influential. Secondly, he's got a category error that he's making right now, and that he's saying, you're never going to get me to say that I want to throw mothers behind bars. I am married to a woman, and we have 5 children. And so none of us are advocating that we should throw mothers in prison. Nobody is advocating that we should press charges on people for being mothers. Okay, nobody's trying to put women in prison or put women behind bars, or the same thing. But this is categorically wrong. Okay, that nobody wants there to be any laws against being a woman or being a mother. We are dealing with homicide. We're dealing with an act of murder. We're dealing with a violation of the 6th commandment. Okay, and so there should be consistency between what you believe and what you do. And so when he says, you're not going to get me to say that we're going to throw mothers behind bars, nobody's asking him to do that. What they are asking him to do is to stop using their bully pulpit of the ERLC to speak against the abolition of abortion. And they have said some ridiculous things in recent times. One of their statements was that we need to make abortion unthinkable and unnecessary. And that's just absurd. Why would you even say that? And I think their reasoning was that, they were going to deal with all of the underlying issues that, abortive mothers face, whether they be financial, economic stresses that might be there. Again, if you spend any time in front of an abortion clinic, you're dealing with people that are not concerned about you helping them financially. Okay, when I first started interacting with women going into abortion clinics, I thought that all I needed to tell them was that there were pregnancy centers that were willing to help them, pregnancy centers that were willing to give them whatever they needed, pregnancy centers, that would help them with, whatever needs they might have. I thought, well, maybe they just don't know that this is a person. This is a human. They just think it's a clump of cells. Maybe they don't know that adoption is an option. And I just need to say these things. And overwhelmingly, people going into abortion clinics, it is not about the cost. Okay, it is not about the finances of this. It is not about an ignorance as to whether or not this is life. It is very normal that someone will say, it's all right, I can kill the child. It's my right. I have a right to kill him. I have a right to kill my child. You tell them about adoption. Adoption is an option. They know that people going in there are aware. And I have had people tell me multiple times, I would rather kill it than let someone else raise my child. In fact, I could go and pull up many quotes online and Twitter feeds where people are making these statements. There is understanding that this is human life, and there is understanding that adoption is an option. Now, that said, people do change their minds. And we've seen that on a couple of occasions when I was more involved at being out there in, a more consistent way. And I'm not at the same way now because I have different reasons. But Saturdays are kind of a zoo out there, and I don't have anyone that goes out with me on weekdays. So there's someone there that wants to go out with me consistently on weekdays, I would be open to doing that. But there's people that do that. There's people that do change their mind. We've thrown baby showers for people in the past. It's really cool to hold a little baby that, was this is your whole, it's really sweet. So I won't keep going on that. That's not what this is really about. But my point is that what he's saying here is false. This isn't right. This isn't true. And no one's trying to put mothers in prison. No one's trying to put women in prison. We're dealing with the crime of homicide, and the ERLC needs to stop saying, you need to stop speaking against this and using these really bad arguments to say this.
The view of this entity, that is not the view of this convention. It is not the view of the pro-life movement. That was proven yet again today. I believe the same principles that Jesus used in John 4 and John 8 apply right here. Maybe instead of rushing in like a mob, we instead rush in with the truth given to us by the author of life, showing we are able to bear the burdens of others and offer the healing that comes with grace, just as has been poured out for us, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're going to proceed with the report so the chair recognizes Brent Leatherwood as the acting president of the Ethics Religious Liberty Commission for his report, and then we will proceed with questions following that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did not cue this video up in such a way that this report's not going to, that I'm going to be able to go straight to the next question. So I'm just going to play this video, and it's going to be what it is. And if you don't want to watch this part, you can skip ahead to the next question, but I'm just going to play the video so I don't have to do any editing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just before I begin, I have a point of order. I should, and this goes to the Committee on the Order of Business, I should never again have to go after my vice chair, Kevin Smith, preaches. That's true. No, Mr. President, actually, I want to start my comments, the report for the ERLC, with just a quick word of gratitude to you messengers. Our team is especially grateful to you for the show of support that you gave our entity earlier today. Thank you so much on behalf of the ERLC. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That foundational phrase has been with us since the beginning of our republic, and those words laid down an important marker in human history. They signified that this new national experiment that our forefathers were initiating would be unlike any other. Instead of a nation governed by the will of man or the wishes of a monarch, Ours would be a society that prioritizes opportunity for each and every individual. Yet those lofty ideals have far too often been out of reach or kept out of reach for many. But thankfully, in many cases, the church has been there to point to a different way, a better way, and in doing so, prick the conscience of the state. There's a long Baptist history of doing so. And so it is to this present day. As we have just shown with our Stand for Life presentation, this convention continues to provide a needed word on some of the very fundamental questions that our society wrestles with. Over the last 50 years, the most vulnerable neighbors in our midst have been taken advantage of, dispatched without care, and discarded without thought. Over 60 million precious preborn lives, all made in the image of God, have systematically been robbed of their ability to pursue the very essential blessings of life, liberty, and happiness. All of this stems from a wrong-headed decision by our U.S. Supreme Court that was handed down in 1973. That year, the majority opinion in the disastrous Roe versus Wade decision contained a phrase that has reverberated down the years in American culture: the unwanted child. By affirming those words, the court allowed generations of preborn children to be robbed of their dignity and their lives, an atrocity unlike any other. As Christians who recognize the Genesis 3 reality in which we live, we understand nothing short of Christ's return will truly repair the brokenness that affects our relationships in a fallen world. But we should not fail to recognize the ways this opinion did harm here to relationships. It essentially created a permission structure that allowed the abortion industry to come between the mother and the child. Because of this, countless mothers have been sold the lie that their lives will be burdened, less rich and rewarding, and ultimately less satisfying with the child in the picture. Thankfully, we live in a nation that has the capacity to rectify injustices of the past. That truth has guided the pro-life movement for years. Should the leaked draft opinion from the Supreme Court remain the same, we will see this occur once more, where we will witness the most significant achievement in the history of the pro-life movement. If that day comes, this convention of churches, you, as Southern Baptists, will have played an instrumental role in getting us to that moment. For nearly 40 years, our churches have made advocacy for life a priority. Countless hours have been spent preaching the truth of God's word, pleading for abortion to end, serving mothers who have been targeted, ministering to children through adoption and foster care services, discussing the moral ramifications of the destruction of life with our nation's policymakers, and maintaining a consistent presence in the courtrooms of our country. All of our efforts will have made a difference. By overruling the Roe precedent, we will begin the process of saving a new generation of families from enduring these awful and false narratives. But know what I just said there. Begin. While overturning Roe will go a long way toward correcting the errors of the past made by the state, it is up to Christians to realize that such a decision, as momentous as it would be, is not the end of the challenge before us. In fact, it will represent the starting point for a new pro-life generation, because we will not be satisfied with a post-Roe world. We are striving for a post-abortion world. For all the good that a favorable decision would do, there will still be mothers in crisis and families in chaos. It will also mean that the conversations we have before the Supreme Court or in the marbled corridors of Congress will now take place right next door. Your ERLC has been diligently preparing for this moment, whether it's with our Stand for Life event, pastor convenings, our forthcoming church curriculum, or the continued ministry of our Psalm 139 project. We have pursued every feasible avenue to both equip the church and continue our advocacy for life before a watching world. Let me expand briefly on one of those items. Over 20 years ago, under the leadership of Richard Land, your ERLC began the Psalm 139 project, an initiative to place life-saving ultrasound machines in pro-life clinics across the country. Because we use private donations and not cooperative program funding for this program, we typically place 1 to 2 machines per year. But 2 years ago, under the leadership of Russell Moore, we announced an ambitious goal to place 50 ultrasound machines by the 50-year mark of Roe versus Wade in January of 2023. Behind me is a map. In pink, you will see all of the places where Planned Parenthood is located. In white, you will see all the places where Psalm 139 is striving to combat Planned Parenthood with a message of life. Why is this important? Because the technology behind these machines demolishes the lies used by Planned Parenthood.
Okay, I wasn't actually in the room at this time when this happened. Janice and I were trying to make a plane that we did not make. So I didn't actually get to look at this, but I think it's a little bit astounding that the white dots overwhelmingly are not where the pink dots are. But I'm sure there may be reasons for that. Just something that I'm noticing in their map here.
To prey upon mothers, and as such, they are essential. And that is why today, I am pleased to announce publicly, for the first time, the ERLC has secured the necessary outside funding to not only meet our goal of 50 placements, but to exceed that goal 6 months ahead of schedule.
I want to stop here and make another comment here. This is, kind of being put up as an either or. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. And it's not. It's not like, look, you can either be speaking for equal protection under the law, or you can be, helping women when they're in need of help. You can do both of those. And we as a church have striven, if that's a word, we've strove to participate in both sides of that, to speak that there should be equal protection for all people, that abortion should absolutely be abolished, and the appropriateness of, reaching out and helping people in their time of need with a goal of bringing them the gospel. And so this is not an either or. It's just not. It's a false dichotomy.
And here's the great thing about it. Partnership made this possible. As we joined with the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention, the North Carolina Baptist State Convention, the Alabama Baptist Convention, and the Florida Baptist Foundation to make this happen. That last point is especially meaningful to me. When I was placed in this role last year, our #1 priority became fortifying relationships across the SBC. We knew, as the old saying goes, cooperation rides on the rails of relationship. Not only did this staff of faithful servants set out to serve in that manner, they've done so in a way that ensures more children will be able to take their first breath outside the womb, an incredible victory. The fact is, we have a talented team at the RLC, and it is such a joy to be alongside them in this season, however long it lasts, to come to work each day and know that I am laboring with such a gifted group of individuals who redefine the term joyful warriors. You see, it takes a person with a special makeup to work at the one entity of the SBC where all of your work is carried out in the arena for all to see and to offer their thoughts. But that comes with the territory in this role. It has been that way ever since this entity began receiving the sacrificial gifts of Southern Baptists through the cooperative program. For 75 years now, the RLC has been privileged to be a part of this framework, and we're grateful for it. To commemorate this, we've created this booklet about our 75 years of Southern Baptist advocacy in the public square, which we've handed out all week. And later this summer, we hope to send a copy to every church in the SBC as a token of our appreciation. Your giving has powered this organization. And without you sending this organization into the public square, none of this would be possible. In closing, I want to say this. I stand before you thankful for the actions taken at this convention related to sexual abuse. For too long, wickedness has festered in our midst, but last year you began the process of rooting it out and bringing it into light. Many doubted, and some even calculated, that when we as a convention were confronted with these horrors, we would flinch. You said no. You remembered the words from Isaiah and James that tell us to be a voice for those who have been rendered vulnerable. Your ERLC seeks to complement this course you've charted. Our Caring Well materials will be updated with new resources coming to aid our churches and new initiatives planned. And our ERLC trustee board has wisely decided to move forward with an SBC sexual abuse assessment that will be a cooperative look at how churches have responded to abuse and develop the resources needed to prevent it. All that I have recounted for you today is driven by the same spirit, a spirit that leads us to speak up for the vulnerable and the marginalized, those who are seen and those who are not, those who are with us and those who are to come. We shouldn't miss the parallels here. The same God who speaks to us about life also speaks to us about abuse, just as he does in so many other areas with the same authoritative voice. What a powerful witness this establishes for our church. For if we correct our errors, repudiate the misdeeds of our own past, and seek justice for those who have suffered, we will set a much needed example for a culture in need of the same. In doing so, I believe we will help establish an actual culture of life right here where God has called us, creating, if you will, a more perfect union where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is truly available to every individual, born and preborn alike. Mr. President, it'd be an honor to take additional questions.
Thank you, Brent.
I don't think he realizes, well, he doesn't realize how inconsistent he is being here. So, I mean, how much greater of a victim can you be than to be, have your life taken away by the person who is supposed to be caring for you? And so all that he's saying there in regard to victimhood and abuse, in regard to, how you should be advocating for the life of victims and how you should be seeking justice there, very much needs to be applied in a consistent way in these other areas that he is speaking against, in which they're about to speak against here as we go forward. So sorry I included that part. I didn't have it queued up. I forgot that. Actually, I didn't even forget. I wasn't here at this time. So let's go ahead with the questions. And I believe that you're going to see Paul Thompson and Blake Gideon ask questions. And there's going to be one other person that asked he asked a really good question just regarding, what commandment is broken by someone, what law of God is broken when someone has an abortion. What law is that? So,
Are there questions concerning the report? I recognize microphone 1A.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and President of the ERLC. My name is Paul Thompson. I pastor the Eastside Baptist Church in Twin Falls, Idaho. In the state of Idaho, over 1,600 preborn children will be dismantled, ripped, sucked, chemically burned through induced abortions, with or without a Roe decision. Of those 1,600 who will be murdered in my state, 287 of them happen in my city, the city of Twin Falls, Idaho, where they are murdered. My question to you is direct, and I desire a direct answer. My question is, in November of 2022, I'm running for Idaho Senate because no one in my city and few in my state will stand for the preborn. So I'm running for this office asking the citizens of the state of Idaho to appoint me to the state Senate. And I'm asking you, will you please not write letters to the state of Idaho to reduce the efforts and to eliminate the opportunity that we could speak for the preborn, and that not mothers, but that murderers can no longer murder children in my state?
I think as you have seen here today, our heart is for life. And I don't think that anybody in good faith can contest that. The reality is we're going to continue speaking for life just in the same ways that we always have. We want to make sure that it is illegal. We want abortion banned. And so we would join with you in that effort. But we also want to make it unthinkable and unnecessary. And we use that language. That's very purposeful language that we use.
There they are again. They said it. They want to make abortion unnecessary. I saw a tweet that someone had put out where they're like, let's try this out with other sins, right? Let's make, murder unnecessary. Let's make abuse unnecessary. And it doesn't really seem to work when you begin to plug in other sins in there. And the RLC is, we went to one of their presentations on, I don't remember if it was, I think it might have been on Tuesday night. And they began to go forward in their argumentation that abortion needs to be made unnecessary. They began to give a series of things that need to be done by the state, such as lower housing costs and provide jobs for everyone, and the cost of education and the cost of food, and I don't know if they realize what they're saying, but it's not really the role or the place or the purpose of the state to be regulating these things. And then historically, when states do get involved in regulating these areas, it leads to less availability of these items. And so the very people that you're trying to help, when you begin to mess around with the markets, and I don't mean dealing with people that are taking advantage of situations like when there's a hurricane or something, but I mean like just normal every day. And the cost of housing is going up. That it does go up, it does go down, it does affect different people, and the state can make it even worse. And so they're advocating for things here that the state has no authority to be doing anything with, and are not reasons. If you've been to abortion clinics, you see Escalades driving in there. You see very nice cars driving into the abortion clinics. You see very wealthy people having abortions. And I'm not going to try to make up a stat that I think I know at this point. So, but you see it if you're there. If you're there and you're around people that are having abortions in these places at the times when they're happening, you realize that this is not an economic issue. This is not going to be solved by changing economics or changing even these things. They don't have authority to change them. So I'm really hoping they're going to stop saying this making abortion unnecessary. I think it has not gone over well, and it's been a distraction from what they're trying to do. So let me keep going with this answer.
We use illegal because that speaks for the child. We want it to be illegal to take the life of a preborn child. So we use that term. We are asking for the government to step in and save the life of that child.
But they don't want it to be illegal. I mean, they're purposely writing it in ways so that it's not illegal, and they're writing it in ways so that people can go and perform self-administered abortions, and it will not be illegal. So, I mean, what he's saying there isn't consistent. And even in the application of some of these laws that they're advocating for, they're advocating not necessarily for it being illegal, but rather for it being more of a civil penalty where there can be lawsuits. The so-called heartbeat bill is one that falls into that category. It's not making it necessarily illegal. It's just saying that an outside party can sue when that happens. That's not happened so far. We haven't had any. I've looked for it, but we haven't had anyone actually get sued over that. But that's a separate issue. I'm getting off track.
We use unnecessary because that's speaking to these mothers where they are. They're continually messaged by Planned Parenthood and the predatory abortion industry that preys upon them and sells them lie after lie after lie. And we want to offer them a different way. And we also use the word unthinkable. And that word has been used for ages now by the SBC. We use the word unthinkable because we want to cast a vision for the culture, calling the culture to a better way to truly establish a culture of life. So brother, let me hear me say this. I am thankful that you are stepping up to serve the citizens of your state. Good luck with that. And we will be there with you to save lives, serve mothers, and ban abortion and go after the abortion industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We are out of time, but we would like to, if it's okay with the body, we would like to extend for 2 more questions. 8A, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you.
I want to stop real quick and just make one more comment here. I do think that the leadership there is being charitable in allowing these questions to come forward, because these questions are very adversarial toward the leadership of the SBC at this time. And they are granting the opportunity for more of these questions to come over. So they're going to get 2 more questions, just like the ones that they've already gotten.
Brown, pastor of First Baptist Plummerville in Plummerville, Arkansas. The previous speaker rightly referred to a willful abortion as a sin. My question is it a sin before God by the mother who willfully participates in it? And if so, which law of God did she break?
The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, he answers that all sarcastically. And I think that was a good question. You're saying that someone shouldn't be penalized for taking the life of their child, but yet is the Lord going to hold them morally culpable? Are they going to be responsible for the Lord? What law are they breaking? And so this is a man who speaks for the ERLC, and he had spoken on that. And Mr. Plummer here asked them a direct question. So what law is it that they're breaking? And he comes out and says it. It's the 6th commandment that is being broken at that time.
Microphone 9A with a question, please.
Yes, Dr. Leatherwood.
I'm
My
not a
name
doctor.
is-
Let me stop you there. I appreciate you. It looks like
Let me pause this one. I don't know who this person is or what they're going to ask. So, but I'm going to play it anyway. So.
Jared,
Yes, sir.
I am not a doctor, so just call me Brent, please.
Okay. Brent, I'm Jared Moore, messenger from Cumberland Homesteads Baptist Church. And I have a question about your slogan for Stand for Life, making abortion unnecessary. If you believe that abortion is a violation of thou shalt not murder, then you're saying making murder unnecessary, which implies that it's necessary. I think you should change it. If a mother sees that, she's going to think it's necessary. Unless she talks to y'all, it could cost babies' lives.
All right, thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you for that, Jared. I did touch on this in my previous answer, but actually, I'm going to let you hear from my colleague, Elizabeth Graham, who has done an incredible job. Let me just take a moment to say this. She's done an incredible job as our VP of Life Initiatives. Dr. Moore, when he was president, gave her a very tough assignment. He wanted to make sure that all of our life initiatives were housed under one office, and she has stepped up to lead so well, and she is leading our Stand for Life efforts, and she is going to respond more directly to you, Mr. Jared.
Jared, I think you said you're at microphone 8. I can't really see you out there, but thank you for that question. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that we have the incredible privilege of partnering with other like-minded organizations through a Collective Impact Alliance. And so as a part of our Collective Impact Alliance work, for the last 5 years, the ERLC has been the lead on church engagement for this work. It's 12 national pro-life organizations and ministries that work in various areas of the pro-life movement, representing adoption and foster care, baby rescue and intervention, legal and legislative. And we also, once a year, bring together a large group of pro-life organizations for that as well. And there's 100 ministries that are participating in that annually. And as a part of that work, we together have launched this initiative called Stand for Life. And the goal of Stand for Life for the conference and the agreed upon language is that we want to see one, abortion illegal, which we discussed earlier. We want to see abortion unthinkable through seeing hearts, minds, attitudes, and behaviors changed through discipleship and curriculum in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And third, we want to address the underlying systemic drivers for why women find themselves in a position that they feel that they have no other option but to seek abortion. And so there are many things being worked on, but this was the call to action agreed upon by all organizations for that tagline. So we will do some work on behalf of Southern Baptists to advocate to include unthinkable and unnecessary. We heard the concerns. We have already made an adjustment, and I appreciate you sharing that with me directly and having the opportunity to respond to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, ERLC, for your report. I thank your staff and your board. God bless each and every one of you. The chair.
Okay, so couple comments there. I think that's positive in that it looks like to me that the EROC is considering changing that wording, which would honestly just be fantastic. I would be really happy if they did that and stopped using that kind of wording, because that is just absolutely terrible wording. Secondly to that, Jared Moore, I don't know if anyway, I appreciate him asking what he did. Again, just remember the echo is astounding in there. And so it causes you to hear your own voice differently. I remember when I was at the convention last year and I was like, my goodness, man, everyone sounds like they live in the Appalachian Mountains. And the fact is they don't. It's just, that's how you start talking when you're speaking over the microphone and you have that echo. So that's all I wanted to share on the SBC. And I think those were some really good questions that the ERLC got. I think their feet were held to the fire there, and they had to answer some difficult questions because of things that they're doing. And my hope is that that is going to lead them to think more carefully in regard to lobbying against bills for the abolition of abortion and bills that seek to establish equal protection under the law. One last comment, that there's a lot more I could say about the SBC, but I'm not going to say anything else. One last comment is I want to share with you, when I got back on Thursday, I headed out to the Republican National Convention because I was a delegate and I wanted to have an opportunity to speak there on equal protection under the law. We had people that were volunteers for Abolish Abortion Texas, and I believe also some volunteers or interns maybe from 50 states that were passing out some of this literature. There's some other literature that are passing out, but yes, there was a resolution on abolishing abortion, and there was a few other things that they were trying to deal with. And so I got in line at a mic when I thought I was supposed to get in line, which was like at 9 in the morning, and I'm being told that maybe I didn't have to get in line, and I stood in line in that mic for, I don't know, it felt like 6 or 7 hours. I don't know. Maybe it was less. Maybe I didn't have to do that, but I don't know. I got in line and they had changed the rules in the meeting so that going through each section of the party platform, they were going to give, instead of 15 minutes of debate, there was only going to be 2 minutes of debate, which in the parliamentary world means that you merely make a motion to change something. That's the 1 minute of debate for something, and then you want someone that can speak against it, and that's the 2 minutes for the whole section. And this was a very large section, and one portion of that section was on pro-life issues, and in that you had a party plank on being pro-life and a party plank on the on abolishing abortion, and they obviously weren't consistent. I stood in line and I got called on, and probably the least qualified guy to get called on, but they called on me. And so this is a short video of that. So this is standing in line for 5 hours, and I get to talk for 1 minute, and here's what happens.
I'm sorry, not the entire section. It's the plank. I misspoke. So if you vote on 172, it's the whole section. I mean, see, I did it again. The whole plank. Thank you.
Plank by plank. Mr. Chairman, I submit for discussion the 8th section of the platform entitled State Affairs. Under this section are planks.
So listen to that. There's going to be a bunch of pieces. There's going to be under this section, there are different areas of focus, and you're going to find that they're very wide ranging. And so on all of this, there can only be a grand total of 2 minutes of debate on all of it.
Regarding heritage preservation, family and gender issues, pro-life, land use, and state governance.
Okay, we are taking up the state affairs section. Let me take mic 4.
Hello, my name is Aaron Wright. I'm from Senate District 4. I would like to make a motion to strike plank 216 from the platform. And if possible, I'd like to speak to this motion.
Okay. Please, second by who?
Anthony Lodi, Senate District 12.
Okay, we got 1 minute for, 1 minute against. Go ahead, mic 4.
And to fill in just a little bit here, I was supposed to have looked at a text that said I was going to reference this sign they have behind me, and I did not recognize that text. I was too busy trying to fight for my place in line because people were trying to move in front of me, and I was just trying to diplomatically hold my place in line where I was. And I'm basically asking them to remove the entire plank 216 on pro-life issues and just stay with plank 217, which deals with abolishing abortion. And there's a lot of things that I could point out that are bad about plank 216, the pro-life, but I'm only going to pick what, in my opinion, was the absolute worst portion of it. And it's pretty ridiculous how this is written. And these planks are supposed to communicate to lawmakers the party platform, and to, you know, encourage them to write laws that are consistent with what the party platform says. So here's my 1 minute.
Do you want to speak in favor of your motion?
Yes, please. First, 216 is unnecessary because 217 covers everything that is necessary regarding the protection of the preborn. Furthermore, this plank is very poorly written. We are placing in our platform wording in point I that says a mother can perform an abortion on herself and sell the body parts and be completely excluded from any criminal prosecution. This is disgusting. Dear friends, this is not equal protection under the law, and this contradicts our legislative priority on abolishing abortion. Furthermore, this contradicts plank 36 in the Republican platform, which is equal protection for the preborn. Dear friends, we must stand firmly upon equal protection of the preborn. This is something that is grounded in the law of God.
Time.
It's hard to say it all in 1 minute. So, well, I said what I did.
Thank you. And speaking against mic 2.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Dr. John Seago, SD 14, President of Texas Right to Life. Chairman, delegates, I oppose this amendment that would weaken our pro-life Republican Party of Texas platform. Because of the work of Republicans like you all, the Supreme Court is about to overturn Roe v. Wade, the worst Supreme Court decision in our history. It is about to be a relic of the past, not because of the Democrats, but because of you all who have fought for life session after session. We do not need to back away from our strong platform. The last item on that list in 216 shows that we have to prosecute abortionists ourselves as Texans because these Democrat DAs are going to go around the law even if we make abortion illegal on the books. That's the commitment that this party has had to the pro-life movement. We should not strike this amendment. Vote no on this. We need to stay strongly pro-life.
Thank you. The time's up. We'll now vote on
So you can look there and you can get a chance to look at what the actual wording was. I was dealing particularly with this last portion here. Criminal penalties be attached to any entity, excluding the mother, convicted of conducting illegal abortions or selling body parts of aborted children. And so the way that's worded, it clearly excludes the mother from doing anything in there, conducting the abortion or selling the body parts. And there's other things that we could walk through this and find that are problematic about it. But it's not going to pass. And he didn't deal with my amendment that I was saying. He, spoke in what was going to work. And in these conventions like this, SBC falls very much in line with this. They're very much, they're very much, they're very emotional, and there's a lot of sway that goes toward emotions at time beings. And he's able to give a big hoorah there that, hey, look at all we've done. Look at what's about to happen with Roe v. Wade. Do you really not want to be pro-life? Do you really want to back off of all that we've accomplished? And this, I don't even know that this was on the board when I was even talking about it. So the amount of time that people are processing this, or there's just not the time period to, in 1 minute, to really speak on this, but said what we could.
on the amendment to strike the pro-life portion of the platform on 216. All in favor of striking section 216 entitled pro-life, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? The noes have it. The motion fails.
And so you can see there that overwhelmingly the noes had it, and so that's certainly true. But there were many people there that were voting for its removal and that had an issue with it. So that's what Janice and I did this last week, and we appreciate your support in these efforts, and hope this is helpful to you. It looks like this video, I probably need to get better at making this. My first time to ever make one where I tried to include the videos and other content, and this was like 3.5 hours long. So that's crazy. But that was me just covering some of the basics and things that happened of what was going on at the Southern Baptist Convention and also the Republican National Convention. And I appreciate even Dr. Jim Renahan coming in to preach last week, because I didn't have to think about that last week. I didn't have to think about what I was going to preach on, what I was going to say on it. I didn't have to think about Sunday school. And it was a blessing to have him come in. So I do appreciate that. And so again, hope this was helpful to you, and God bless. Thank you.